You know that moment when someone dismisses your expertise right to your face? When they smile while doing it, like they're doing you a favor? That's exactly what happened when my manager, Gregory Walsh, pulled me from the quarterly budget review at Diamond Enterprises. "We need sharper eyes on numbers," he smirked, his condescending tone cutting through the conference room air like a blade through silk. I stepped aside, watching him take my seat at the mahogany table where I'd spent 3 weeks preparing every projection, every forecast, every single detail that would determine our company's future. The sting wasn't just professional, it was deeply personal. This was my project, my expertise, my reputation on the line. Let me paint you the complete picture of how we got here. I'm Helen Rangers, Senior Financial Analyst at Diamond Enterprises, with 8 years of experience turning messy spreadsheets into strategic goldmines. But this story really begins 6 months earlier, when Diamond Enterprises underwent what corporate executives love to call organizational restructuring. Our previous CFO, Patricia Monroe, had been a mentor to me. She understood that good financial analysis wasn't about impressive presentations, it was about accuracy, foresight, and understanding the intricate relationships between different business units. Under her leadership, I'd grown from junior analyst to senior analyst, earning respect from department heads who knew they could trust my numbers. Then Patricia retired early, and everything changed. Diamond Enterprises brought in Gregory Walsh from Steinberg & Associates, a consulting firm known for flashy presentations and corporate buzzwords. Gregory arrived with an MBA from a prestigious school, a wardrobe of expensive suits, and absolutely zero understanding of our industry's unique financial challenges. Our company specialized in precision manufacturing for aerospace components, a field where quarter percentage point accuracy in cost projections could mean the difference between winning and losing multimillion-dollar contracts. Every budget line item connected to complex supply chain relationships, regulatory compliance costs, and technical specifications that couldn't be simplified into generic business school formulas. But Gregory didn't seem interested in these complexities. In his first week, he scheduled efficiency meetings with every department head, armed with standardized questionnaires that completely missed the nuances of our operations. When manufacturing supervisor Carlos Martinez tried to explain why their equipment maintenance costs fluctuated based on production cycles, Gregory cut him off with, "Let's focus on the bottom line numbers, not operational excuses." I watched this happening and felt a growing knot in my stomach. This wasn't just about different management styles, this was about fundamental misunderstanding of how our business actually worked. The quarterly budget review wasn't just any presentation. This was the document that would determine our company's strategic direction for the next 6 months, including decisions about capital equipment purchases, workforce planning, and new contract bidding strategies. The board of directors would use these projections to make decisions affecting 200 employees and their families. I'd been leading this project since day one, working late nights in my cramped office overlooking the manufacturing floor. While Gregory attended networking dinners and executive retreats, I was building relationships with department heads, understanding their real needs beyond the sanitized numbers they submitted in official reports. Take our research and development budget, for example. On paper, it looked like a straightforward allocation of resources to various projects. But I knew that Dr. Patricia Chen's polymer coating research was 3 months ahead of schedule and would likely require additional materials testing by the end of the quarter. I also knew that the prototype testing lab was dealing with equipment calibration issues that would temporarily increase their external contractor costs. These weren't details you could find in quarterly reports, they came from conversations, from understanding the rhythms of our business, from recognizing patterns in expense fluctuations that told stories about operational realities. Gregory saw none of this. To him, budgeting was about applying generic formulas and presenting results with confident authority. What followed were 5 days that tested every ounce of my professional composure. Gregory didn't just review my work, he dismantled it, piece by piece, replacing careful analysis with assumptions that looked impressive but ignored fundamental realities. Day 1 started with Gregory calling me into his corner office, the one with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the executive parking lot. He'd printed my entire budget analysis, 67 pages of detailed projections, supporting documentation, and risk assessments, and spread it across his conference table like evidence at a crime scene. "Helen, this is too conservative," he announced, barely glancing at the supporting data I'd spent weeks compiling. "We need to show growth potential, not worst-case scenarios." He changed my revenue projections for the aerospace division, increasing them by 15% based on what he called industry growth trends he'd found in a McKinsey report. But those industry trends reflected commercial aviation, not our specialized military and precision manufacturing contracts. Our revenue growth depended on winning specific, competitive bids, not broad market expansion. When I tried to explain this distinction, Gregory dismissed my concerns with an patronizing smile. "Helen, you're thinking too small. The board wants to see ambition, not accountant mentality." Day 2 brought even more dramatic changes. Gregory rewrote entire sections I'd carefully crafted, changing formatting that highlighted critical insights and, worst of all, altering key calculations without understanding their underlying logic. My depreciation schedules for manufacturing equipment were simplified, meaning he'd applied straight-line depreciation to machinery that actually required accelerated depreciation due to intensive usage patterns. "This looks cleaner," he explained, pointing to his revised charts. "The board doesn't need to see all these complicated calculations." But those complicated calculations reflected the reality that our precision grinding equipment lost value much faster in the first 3 years of operation due to wear patterns specific to titanium alloy processing. His simplified version understated our actual costs by nearly $200,000 annually. Day 3 escalated into what I can only describe as professional gaslighting. When I presented documentation showing why his changes would create significant budget variances, Gregory accused me of being resistant to leadership direction. "Helen, you're too detail-oriented," he said during one particularly tense exchange in the break room, while other colleagues pretended not to listen. "The board wants big-picture thinking, not your obsessive number crunching." The word obsessive hit me like a slap. 8 years of meticulous work, of building trust with department heads who relied on accurate projections, of catching errors that could have cost us major contracts, and he reduced it to obsessive behavior. But Gregory wasn't finished. He scheduled individual meetings with department heads to align them with his revised projections, essentially asking them to justify numbers they hadn't provided. I sat in on several of these meetings, watching confusion spread across faces as Gregory explained projections that contradicted their operational realities. During the meeting with facilities manager Robert Kim, Gregory confidently stated that utility costs would decrease by 12% due to efficiency improvements. Robert looked genuinely puzzled. "Mr. Walsh, we're actually expecting utility costs to increase because we're adding the new clean room facility for the Pentagon contract," Robert explained patiently. Gregory barely paused. "We'll capture those efficiencies through better energy management," he replied, as if saying it would make it true. After Robert left, I approached Gregory privately. "The clean room facility will definitely increase our utility baseline," I said, showing him the engineering specifications and power consumption estimates. "We can't budget for efficiency improvements that don't exist yet." Gregory's response floored me. "Helen, sometimes you need to budget aspirationally. We'll find ways to make the numbers work." Day 4 brought the realization that Gregory wasn't just misunderstanding our business, he was actively undermining the credibility I'd built with operational managers. In his meeting with production supervisor Angela Foster, he presented labor cost projections that assumed we could reduce overtime expenses by 30%. Angela, who'd worked with me on workforce planning for 3 years, looked directly at me with raised eyebrows. "Helen, didn't we discuss that the new aerospace contract would actually require increased overtime during the ramp-up phase?" Before I could respond, Gregory interjected. "We're implementing new efficiency protocols that will eliminate most overtime needs." After the meeting, Angela cornered me in the hallway. "Helen, what's going on? These numbers don't match anything we discussed. Are you okay with this?" I felt caught between loyalty to my professional relationships and the impossible position Gregory had created. "I'm documenting our concerns," I told her carefully. "My original recommendations are different from what's being presented." But the damage was spreading. Department heads who'd trusted my analysis for years were now questioning whether I'd lost touch with operational realities. Phone calls from confused managers became a daily occurrence. "Helen, can you help me understand why the budget shows our equipment maintenance costs dropping when we just identified 3 machines that need major overhauls?" asked Maintenance Chief Frank Rodriguez. Each conversation felt like watching my professional reputation crumble in real time. Day 5 morning brought an emergency meeting with the executive team. Gregory had scheduled it to present the final budget before board submission, and he wanted me there as technical support, essentially to answer detailed questions about analysis I no longer recognized. The conference room felt different that morning. Senior Vice President Patricia Wong looked unusually serious, and Operations Director Michael Chung kept glancing between Gregory and me with an expression I couldn't read. Gregory launched into his presentation with characteristic confidence, using my original slide templates but filled with his revised numbers. He spoke about aggressive growth targets and operational efficiency gains while I sat there knowing that every projection was built on assumptions that contradicted our actual business conditions. Then came the questions that made my stomach drop. "Gregory, this shows a significant decrease in R&D spending," Patricia Wong observed. "How does that align with our new product development timeline?" Gregory glanced at me, clearly expecting me to field the technical question. But his revised budget had cut R&D spending by 20% to improve profit margins, a decision that would derail two critical projects already in progress. I felt the weight of every eye in the room. This was the moment of truth. The original R&D allocation was based on committed project timelines, I said carefully. Reducing it by this amount would impact our development schedule for the military contract upgrades. Gregory's jaw tightened. "Helen, we discussed finding efficiencies in all departments." "Actually, we didn't discuss specific R&D cuts," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. "The original budget maintained R&D spending to meet contractual obligations." The tension in the room was palpable. I'd essentially contradicted my manager in front of the entire executive team. Patricia Wong made a note. "We'll need to review this more carefully before board presentation." After the meeting, Gregory was furious. "Helen, we need to talk," he said tersely, following me back to my office. What came next was a conversation I'll never forget, not because of what Gregory said, but because of what I finally understood about my own worth. Then came the moment that changed everything. Gregory stormed into my office like a hurricane, his face flushed, his usually perfect hair disheveled, his expensive suit wrinkled from what had clearly been a very long morning. The confident, condescending manager I'd been dealing with for 5 days was gone, replaced by someone who looked genuinely panicked. "Why did the board find the errors first?" he yelled, slamming the revised budget report onto my desk with such force that my coffee mug jumped. But here's what made this moment truly beautiful: I was completely ready. The board meeting had apparently been a disaster. Patricia Wong later told me the details. Gregory had presented his revised budget with his characteristic confidence, using corporate buzzwords and impressive-sounding projections. For the first 20 minutes, everything seemed fine. Then board member Dr. Sandra Mitchell, who had 30 years of manufacturing experience before joining our board, started asking specific questions. "These depreciation schedules look unusually low for precision manufacturing equipment," she'd observed. "Are we accounting for the intensive usage patterns?" Gregory had stumbled through a non-answer about optimized asset utilization. Board Chairman Robert Stevens, himself a former aerospace industry executive, had picked up on the inconsistency. "This revenue projection assumes 15% growth in military contracts. What specific bids are we including in that projection?" Again, Gregory couldn't provide specifics because he'd based his projections on generic industry reports rather than our actual contract pipeline. The questioning had grown more pointed. Finance Committee Chair Margaret Foster had identified the utility cost projections that ignored our new cleanroom facility. Operations Committee member Frank Wilson had questioned labor cost reductions that assumed efficiency improvements we hadn't implemented. Within an hour, the board had identified every single flaw I'd predicted: miscalculated depreciation schedules, revenue projections that ignored our specific market realities, expense categories that had been merged incorrectly, creating phantom savings. But I hadn't just predicted these problems, I'd documented them. During those 5 frustrating days, I'd maintained detailed records of every change Gregory made, every concern I'd raised, and every alternative I'd recommended. I'd kept copies of all my original analysis, complete with supporting documentation and explanations of my methodology. More importantly, I'd prepared a comprehensive comparison document showing the differences between my original recommendations and Gregory's revisions, along with specific explanations of why each change would create problems. I calmly opened my laptop and showed Gregory this document. "Gregory," I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me, "these aren't errors in my work. These are the consequences of changing a financial analysis without understanding the underlying methodology." I pulled up my original depreciation calculations, showing him the equipment specifications, usage patterns, and industry standards that supported my projections. I displayed the contract pipeline spreadsheet that demonstrated why his revenue assumptions were unrealistic. I walked him through the utility impact analysis for the clean room facility that he'd dismissed. Gregory's face went from red to pale as he realized the scope of the problem. "Can you fix this?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "I can restore the original analysis," I replied carefully. "The one that addresses all these issues." But I wasn't done. This wasn't just about fixing numbers, it was about establishing a new dynamic. "Gregory, I need you to understand something," I continued. "Financial analysis isn't about making numbers look impressive. It's about providing accurate information so leadership can make informed decisions. When you change calculations without understanding their basis, you're not improving the analysis, you're undermining its integrity." For the first time since he'd arrived at Diamond Enterprises, Gregory was truly listening. "The board is requesting a complete revision," he admitted. "They want to meet with whoever prepared the original analysis." "That would be me," I said. Gregory nodded slowly. "Can you have the corrected version ready by tomorrow morning?" "The corrected version already exists," I replied, opening my original budget file. "It's been ready all along." The aftermath unfolded over the following weeks like a carefully orchestrated symphony of professional justice. The next morning, I presented my original budget analysis to the board of directors, with Gregory sitting silently in the corner taking notes. But this wasn't just a simple restoration of my previous work, it was a masterclass in financial analysis that demonstrated exactly what Gregory had failed to understand. I walked the board through each major projection, explaining not just the numbers but the methodology behind them. When I presented the R&D allocation, I detailed which specific projects were in progress, their current status, and how the funding timeline aligned with our contract obligations. For the manufacturing equipment depreciation, I explained the technical specifications that required accelerated schedules and showed historical maintenance data that supported my calculations. Board member Dr. Sandra Mitchell was particularly engaged. "This level of operational integration is exactly what we need in financial planning," she commented. "These projections clearly reflect actual business conditions, not generic formulas." Chairman Robert Stevens was even more direct. "This is the kind of analysis that helps us make strategic decisions with confidence. The original version we saw yesterday was essentially useless for planning purposes." The board not only approved my budget unanimously but also asked detailed questions about our forecasting processes and my recommendations for improving financial planning across other departments. After the meeting, Patricia Wong approached me privately. "Helen, the board was very impressed with your presentation. We'd like to discuss expanding your role to lead financial analysis for the entire company." But the real satisfaction came from watching Gregory's gradual realization that his approach wasn't just wrong, it was professionally destructive. Over the following days, department heads began reaching out to me directly again, seeking clarification on budget allocations and planning discussions. The trust Gregory had inadvertently damaged was quickly restored as people recognized that my original analysis had been accurate all along. Carlos Martinez from manufacturing stopped by my office 3 days after the board presentation. "Helen, I wanted to thank you for fighting for accurate numbers. That equipment maintenance budget you projected is going to be crucial when we start the new Pentagon contract." Dr. Patricia Chen from R&D had a similar message. "The board's questions about my polymer research timeline were exactly what you'd prepared me for. It's clear you understand how our projects actually work." These conversations reminded me why I'd been passionate about financial analysis in the first place. It wasn't about impressive presentations or corporate politics. It was about providing accurate information that helped good people make better decisions. Gregory's behavior changed dramatically as well. The condescending attitude disappeared, replaced by a grudging respect for expertise he was only beginning to understand. He started asking me to explain analytical methods rather than dismissing them. He attended operational meetings to learn about processes he'd previously ignored. 1 month later, Gregory requested a private meeting. "Helen, I owe you an apology," he began. "I came into this role thinking that financial analysis was about presentation skills and confidence. I didn't understand the technical depth required." It was a genuine acknowledgement, and I appreciated it. But what meant more was his follow-up: "I've recommended you for promotion to lead analyst. The position comes with a team and oversight of all departmental budgets. You've earned it." The promotion was official within 6 weeks. Suddenly, I found myself leading a team of 4 analysts, with direct reporting to the executive committee and board presentation responsibilities. It was everything I'd worked toward for 8 years, achieved not through politics or networking, but through demonstrated expertise and professional integrity. My first action as lead analyst was implementing training programs to help department heads better understand financial planning processes. My second was establishing monthly operational reviews to ensure our projections stayed aligned with business realities. Gregory, meanwhile, was quietly transferred to business development, where his networking skills and presentation abilities were better suited to client relations rather than analytical responsibilities. But the transformation went beyond organizational changes. I realized that I'd been accommodating incompetence for far too long, apologizing for thoroughness that others perceived as excessive detail. This experience taught me that expertise isn't something you downplay to make others comfortable, it's something you stand behind with quiet confidence. I also learned the value of documentation. Those careful records I'd maintained during Gregory's revisions became the foundation for new analytical standards across the company. The board now requires that all budget revisions be accompanied by detailed justifications and impact analyses, essentially institutionalizing the thoroughness that Gregory had initially dismissed. 6 months later, our company won the largest aerospace contract in our history, largely based on financial projections that accurately reflected our capabilities and costs. The precision of our budget analysis gave the client confidence in our operational planning and cost management. When I received the email announcing the contract award, I thought about that moment in the conference room when Gregory had smirked and said we needed sharper eyes on numbers. The irony was perfect, we'd succeeded precisely because we'd maintained the analytical rigor he'd tried to eliminate. Today, my team handles financial analysis for all major contracts and strategic initiatives. We've implemented quarterly training sessions where I teach other departments how to provide better data for budget planning. Department heads regularly comment on how our projections help them make better operational decisions. Gregory and I now have a professional relationship based on mutual respect. He focuses on client relationships and business development, where his talents are genuinely valuable. I handle the analytical work that requires deep operational understanding. It's a collaboration that works because we each play to our actual strengths. The most rewarding aspect has been mentoring junior analysts who face similar challenges. When someone questions their methodology or dismisses their detailed work as excessive, I share this story. I remind them that expertise is earned through careful work and maintained through professional integrity. Have you ever had someone dismiss your expertise, only to come running back when they needed your skills to fix their mistakes? You're not alone in this experience, and your story matters more than you might realize. This isn't just about workplace politics or difficult managers, it's about recognizing the value of what you bring to your organization. Your attention to detail, your methodical approach, your insistence on accuracy, these aren't character flaws to apologize for. They're professional strengths that create real value for real people. I learned that standing up for your expertise isn't arrogance, it's responsibility. When you allow others to override your professional judgment for the sake of keeping peace, you're not just compromising your work. You're potentially compromising outcomes that affect colleagues, customers, and communities who depend on accurate analysis. The next time someone tries to simplify your complex work, dismiss your careful methodology, or reduce your expertise to obsessive detail, remember that you have a choice. You can step aside and watch preventable problems unfold, or you can document your concerns, maintain your standards, and be ready when reality proves your expertise was correct all along. Your colleagues, your clients, and your own professional growth deserve nothing less than your best analytical thinking. Don't apologize for being thorough. Don't downplay your expertise to make others comfortable. Stand behind your work with quiet confidence, and let the results speak for themselves. Share your story in the comments below. Tell us about the times your attention to detail saved the day, when your careful analysis prevented costly mistakes, or when standing up for your expertise led to better outcomes. Let's celebrate the quiet victories, the moments when our methodical approach and professional integrity finally get the recognition they deserve. And remember, in a world full of competent incompetence, your careful competence is not just valuable, it's essential. Never apologize for being exceptionally good at what you do.